Mrs. M. Priyadarshini, ME MBA, is doing PhD, is currently working as teaching fellow in the Department of IST, Anna University, Chennai. She completed a master's in software engineering from Anna University. She has about 10 years of experience in handling courses for UG and PG. She was serving as technical evangelist for corporate over 4 years in Java Enterprise Technologies, software engineering, databases, OOAD, and design patterns. She is proficient in handling IT projects as well into concept development for enterprises. She is doing a research in the area of web services security. Her other areas of interest include software engineering, OOAD, databases, enterprise technologies, and service-oriented architecture. She holds many journal publications and conference proceedings in her research area.
Welcome to UGC lecture series in Computer Science, Java Part 30. So in this session, we are going to discuss about event listeners in Applet, GUI components in Applet, about layout manager, about JApplet, and then we are going to see what are all the steps we have in Applet Servlet communication. So in your previous session, we have discussed about what is an applet and what is the applet lifecycle methods that we have. So whenever we create an applet, whenever we instantiate an applet, we have init method which is used to initialize the components in the applet. So it is like constructor for your normal Java class. So here we call the init method, and after init method we go in for other lifecycle methods such as start, stop, and then your destroy method. And in between, if you have any other work that need to be done, like painting your applet, that process will happen. So other than that, we also can include few other methods which could do event handling mechanism with respect to the GUI components that you add on the applet. So first we'll look into event listeners. So applet is a GUI component to form user interface on the browser from the AWT package. So here we know that in your creation of a GUI application, this applet is particularly used for web application. So in web, this applet will be displayed on a browser. So already I have told you that this applet is normally used in intranet because there is an executable code that is behind the applet, and hence it is not suitable for the public network. So this is available, your applet class is available in your AWT package. This is a component and also this is a container. So you can add other components on this applet container also. So whenever I want to create an applet, I create an applet by extending this applet class. So these components may generate events based on user interactions such as processing the enter key or mouse click and so on. So whenever you do any operation on your applet, that is on your container, we have seen lot of methods that need to be listened or handled whenever you do some operation on your container or on your component. So here as such, in your applet we have certain events being generated, like your mouse click, your key listeners, key enter, key press, mouse drag, drop, all these need to be listened, and for that we have already seen that what are all listeners. So listeners are nothing but the interface that is to be implemented by your particular container, that it may be your frame or it may be your applet on which you are going to load your components. So this is going to handle your events. So what are all the events that is raised that need to be handled. So when an applet is designed, these events are trapped and suitable actions to be performed in response to each of those events are provided. So this is what is your event handling mechanism. So I need to find out what are all the components I have. For all the components, I need to find the events. So to handle events, generally event handlers are available that must be suitably manipulated. So this is as that of your normal application, that is a normal frame or a window or dialog that we create. Whereas only difference is this will be displayed on a browser, whereas that will be displayed, or your frame and your dialog will be displayed on a standalone machine. So here what is the procedure that is used in order to handle your events is determine the type of the event that took place, and then determine the component which has generated the event, and then write the appropriate code to handle the event. So it is not necessary that all the methods in your event listener interface need to be implemented. So for example, I have a text box. So when I have a text box, text field, I may get focus to that text field. The focus may be lost over that text field. I may press a particular key, I may release a particular key. There may be many events that is corresponding to that particular component, but we need not handle all these events, whereas we handle only the few based on the requirements. So here you can see that we have a draw applet called applet. So here we have mouse listener being implemented. So it means that this particular applet class has implemented the methods in the mouse listener interface. So you know that applet is available in your AWT package, and then all the event handling mechanism is available in your AWT, and particularly inside your applet, this applet class is available inside your applet package. So you can see that in your init method we have to initialize things. So init method is similar to that of your constructor. So I am calling set layout method. So this is your flow layout. I am setting the layout to be flow layout. So I am setting the bounds of my applet. So you can see that this particular applet is going to have XY position and then the size. And then I am adding the mouse listener for this particular applet. So here I have not mentioned any of the objects here. So whenever I mention a method directly, it means that this method is going to be applied on this particular class in which you have invoked that particular method. So I am setting this particular current object. So it's not necessary that you have to specify this in all these cases. This keyword also could be skipped. So just I can say set visible. So it means that I am making my applet to be visible. So we have many methods, and I already told you that we need not implement all the methods. So here mouse click method is there. All these methods, you know that whenever I implement an interface, all the methods need to be implemented, and even if you don't have any particular implementation, you can give a blank definition at least. But you should ensure that all the methods has been implemented. So that's why what we have done here, just we have given a blank implementation for this method. So here I am going to handle only two methods. One is mouse pressed and mouse released. So here whenever I press my mouse, a mouse event is captured. From this mouse event, I get X and Y position of the particular place or particular point where I have pressed my mouse. So I store that in X1 and Y1 value. So then I am not handling mouse move, where whenever I release the mouse event is catched, and then the X and Y value from that of your mouse is moved on to X2 and Y2. So here we have called repaint method. So you know that repaint method will in turn call the update method. Your update method will first paint your background, and then it will call the paint method. So the implementation of your paint method will be executed now. And then for mouse entered and dragged, we have not implemented anything. And then you can see here we have come to mouse exited. So this also we have not not implemented, and then we come to the paint method. So in the paint method, we know that the parameter of your paint method is graphics object, and this graphics object has method called draw rectangle, which is going to draw a rectangle with the values x1, y1, and then this is your x comma y position where you have pressed your mouse, and then next x2 and y2 position where you have released your mouse. So with this I try to draw a rectangle from that particular position where I have pressed my mouse till where I have released my mouse. So here we have subtracted the x1 value because we have started from the point x1, and we have subtracted the y1 value because we have started from the y1. So once your mouse is released, so automatically your paint method is called, and then your paint method will draw the rectangle with these values, and then I am reassigning my values of x2 and y2 to 0. So that whenever I try to drag it somewhere else, so that rectangle has to be changed to that particular new x2 and y2 position. So you can see here when you execute the program, you know the methodology of executing the program. First you have to compile your program using Java-C, your Java program using Java-C, in which you have the code snippet of your applet, which is inside your multi-line comment, and then you will have your Java applet that is extended and the mouse listener being implemented. That code we have seen. So in this case I have to compile my entire program, and then while I run this, I have run using applet viewer. In the applet viewer, I have to give the Java file name and run it, so that the commented lines where your applet code is inserted will be run. So here you can see this is the name of the applet, and then I have already told you that the menu will be available by default. So this is the place where the mouse has been pressed, and this is the place where your mouse has been released. So whenever I press the mouse here, the X and Y position corresponding to this will be stored in your X1 and Y1, and once I release the mouse here, the X2 and Y2 position will be sent to your program, and whereas this rectangle with this X1, Y1 and then X2 minus X1 and Y2 minus Y1 is printed. So once I drag this again, each and every place wherever I leave that, this is going to work, and then here when I drag this, again my X2 and Y2 value has been converted into 0, so that I can, wherever I drop it next, wherever I release it next, new X2 and Y2 value get applied, and this is your status bar. So this is how you need to run an applet. So we have seen how mouse event is listened. Next we will move into how to load the GUI components on your applet. As I already told you that applet is a container in which you can load all the GUI components. So I can keep on adding all the GUI components. As such I load in a frame, or as such I load it in a dialog. So you can see here, this is a GUI applet, and we have a button variable declared, and then we have a text field being declared. So here you can see I have not implemented the listener, because just here I am going to display only the GUI. I am going to load the GUI components, and then I am going to add the components, and just I am going to display it. I am not going to handle the events of that particular component. So in your previous program I have not included any other components. I have only one applet container, and in that I tried to listen to mouse events, whereas here I am trying to load the components, and then after loading the components I will write listeners for those components also. So we have added a button, and we have added a text field, and then we have added a checkbox group. Inside the checkbox group I am going to add 2 radio buttons. So you know that how to create, we have seen in AWT how to create a checkbox, that is radio button. So we have n number of radio buttons. All these radio buttons are grouped into one particular checkbox group. So it means that any one of them can be true at a point of time. Whereas if you take it a checkbox, the checkbox can be true or false. So if I have 5 checkbox, which checkbox does not belong to any group, it will act as a checkbox. Whereas if I have a set of checkbox which is going to be added inside a checkbox group, it acts as a radio button. So here I have checkbox radio 1 and 2, which is going to be added inside your radio group, and then I am having another checkbox called option. So this is in it. You can see that by default the layout that your applet follows will be flow layout. Whenever I add the components without specifying any layout, it will be based on flow layout. You know what is flow layout? The components will be organized in flow. So whenever I place the components, it will be placed next to that of the component that is already placed. So this will extend till I go to the end of my container. Once my containers with this over, then my component will be placed. If I cannot accommodate the component within the width of the container, just it will move on to the next row. So whereas here I am setting my layout to be null. So it means that I am telling the applet not to use the layout manager. So the default layout manager is your flow layout. So here now the layout is not followed. So it means that if I am setting my layout to be null, this specifies that I need to specify exactly where my components need to be placed on the container. So you can see here OK button, I am creating a new OK button called call, and then my text field in which I have given a default value, type your name, and then I am specifying 100. So this is my number of characters that my text field is going to hold. So next is radio group. I am creating a radio group, and then I am creating 2 radio buttons, which is again a checkbox, and then here I am specifying what is the label that need to be displayed, and then I specify the group in which this particular checkbox need to be attached, and then I specify this to be false. So it means that by default it will not be in selected position. Next, new checkbox female and radio group, I have given it as true. It means that this will be checked. So all should be false, and then any one of that particular radio button, checkbox in that radio group could be true. So you can see here I am creating a checkbox. So this is going to give the marital status married false. So by default it will not be in a selected state. So now I am setting the bounds. So this is what need to be added along with your normal initialization or creation of the button objects, your text for all your GUI objects, because I have set my layout to be null. So here you can see I am setting the bounds where all my components need to be placed. So I say 2020 XY position, and then with the height of the particular component. So I am setting the bounds for all my radio button, my text fields, my button, and then checkbox, everything, and then I am trying to add the components. So here I have not specified any layout, and once I add the components get added in that particular XY positions. So now this particular GUI will be created with all the XY positions that is specified in the setBounds method, and then your all your GUI components will be loaded on your applet, because we have directly added these elements on the applet. So you can see here your applet viewer. Inside your applet viewer we have a button with the name call, and then a text field, and then we have two radio buttons who belong to the same group, and then we have a checkbox. So now we'll have a short break, and then we'll proceed with our event handling mechanism and how applet servlet communication will be done. Welcome after the break. We have been discussing about how to add GUI components in the applet. So now you can see that we have created an applet with all these components, a button which is added, a text field which is added, radio button, that is your checkbox group, and then a separate checkbox. So now here we have not implemented any listeners with respect to this applet. Now whatever the operation that you are going to do on this particular applet will not be listened. So if I try to do some event on this particular text box, if I try to do some events on this particular radio button, so your events will not be listened by your program, and you don't have any handling mechanism. So for this what we need to do is we have to find whichever components need to be listened, and then we try to handle the events that need to be handled. So you can see here we are trying to implement the action listener. So we have seen a list of listeners and then the components associated with that. So action listener is meant in order to handle your button, your combo box, and so on. So here I have implemented the action listener. All the other syntax was same as that of your previous program, and only in your init method, after you add all the components, just I need to include this add action listener method. So same as that of what we have studied in the what we have learnt in your AWT package. So I am adding the action listener to the button, and then I am passing the parameter the current as the current object. So it means that I have implemented the listener, what message handling mechanism inside my current object, that is my applet. So I am passing that as the parameter. So what this line specifies is this button, whenever some events happens on this button, it is listened by the listener that is available or implemented by this particular current applet object. So next you can see here we have implemented the action perform method. So action perform method is the only method that is available in your action listener. So and this method is going to have action event being raised as the parameter. So from that action event we can get the information regarding from which source that particular action has been raised. So you can see here from the action event, here we have only one particular button. So I have not checked from where this particular event has been raised, because I have only one button, and then only from that button would have raised the action listener action event, as well as that will in turn call the action listener. So if I have multiple buttons, or if I have a combo box, then there is a possibility that that would have been raised by some other object. So in that case, I need to find from which source it has been generated, and then based on that I have to handle. Here, since we have only one button, there is no possibility that some other component would have raised this particular event. So you can see I have declared a string title, and here radio1.getState. This returns a boolean value, so that I have used this as a condition. If radio1.getState, it means that if it is true, when I have chosen radio1, then my title will be Mr. Else, if else case, my radio2 would have been true. So it means that this will be true when it is male, and this will be false when it is female. So else condition will handle the female. If option.getState, so option is the checkbox that you have given, so that is whether married or not married. So in that case, married, if this is true, then I give the title as Mrs. So else I give the title as Miss. So and then name field dot set title, I am assigning the value, I am concatenating this title with the name fields get text, and I am assigning that to my name field. And then next we come to an important method that is available in your applet class called getAppletContext. So you know what do you mean by context. So the current applet's reference is said to be getAppletContext. So I am getting my current applet, and then I am getting the contents that I have on my status bar. So in your previous output, I have shown you that there is a status bar at the end of your applet where it gives you whether applet started, initialized, loaded, all those status. So I am just setting a particular status to this particular status bar that is associated with my current applet. So that is what is specified by this line of code, getAppletContext.showStatus. And then I am specifying what status need to be showed on that particular status bar. So all these happens whenever I try to invoke my button. So you can see here the same applet now with event listeners. So here just if I type a name and then I choose the particular sex, and if I choose particular marital status, so your data will get updated in your text box based on whatever the sex and the marital status has been selected. And also you can see that the status bar has been updated with the value that is available in your text field. So now the listeners that we have handled is only one listener, that is your action listener, which belongs to this button. Next we will move into how to set a layout for an applet. So here nothing new in this code. So we have already seen many samples with this code. So this is your applet code, and then this is all the import statements, and then your layout applet is going to extend applet. Here also I don't have any listener class being implemented. So this is just for a display purpose. So you can see I have created two labels. One is for ID and other one is for password, and then I have created two text fields. One is for ID and password, and then I have created two buttons, OK button and reset button. So in my init method I am trying to create objects for them, initialize them. So I am creating two labels, I am creating two text fields, and then here I have not specified any default value. So whenever I display the component will not hold any text contents in that. So and then I am trying to create two buttons. So you know that this OK button is the name of the button, and this OK is what is displayed on that particular button. So whenever I call the action event, this get your source will give you OK button, whereas get action command will give just OK. So here you can see I am setting the layout to be grid layout. So 3 rows and 2 columns in my grid, and then I give 50 and 60 as the name, as the space that should be available between the components. So horizontally it should be 50, and vertically the difference between, that is the space between horizontal space and the vertical space, that should be available when I place the components. Normally when we place the components in the grid, So what happens is the entire container gets occupied with that particular components. So your entire container will be split into 3 rows and 2 columns, and the component will occupy your entire area of your container, whereas I don't want the component to occupy the entire area, and I want that particular component placed inside the area with a particular horizontal and vertical space. So that is the reason why it has been specified here. If I just give 3,2, the components will occupy the entire area of your container, and you will not have any space between your components. So first you can check that I am adding label and then I am adding a text. So it means that I am adding in first row, first column label, and in my first row, second column my text field. Next I add my second row values. So in my second row, first I add the label and then I add the text field. Then in the third row I try to add 2 of my buttons. So here we don't have any listeners. You can see that your applet will be like this. So we have 2 labels, we have 2 text boxes and then 2 buttons. So you can see that your horizontal and vertical space that we have specified is your horizontal space and 50, and then your vertical space is 60. It means that otherwise this user ID and then this component will occupy the entire area without any space between the components. So next we look into what is difference between your applet and your JApplet. So you can see here, in difference between your frame and JFrame is that you can add components directly on the frame, whereas in case of your JFrame you need to get the content pane, the default content pane that is on your frame, and then you have to add the components. Same as that of your frame and JFrame, here in your applet and JApplet also, you have to add the contents on the content pane and not directly on your applet. So you can see the content pane makes Swing applets different from that of your regular applets in the following ways. You can add components to Swing applets content pane, not directly to the applet. You set the layout manager on the Swing applet contents pane, not directly on the applet. So here whenever I call the set layout method, so here you can see that in the applet directly I have given as set layout. In your init method I have directly called the set layout method, whereas in case of your JApplet I have to get the content pane, I have to call get content pane method, then I have to set the layout. I cannot directly set the layout on my JApplet. Next is the default layout manager for a Swing applet content pane is border layout. So this differs from the default layout manager for an applet, which is flow layout. So what applet that we have seen is just an applet, it's not an JApplet. So here we had flow layout as a default layout. In your first program you have set it to be null. In your second program what we have seen, we have set it to be grid layout, whereas the default layout will be flow layout. It will place the component as such in a fashion where how it has been added. So here this is the difference. Whenever I add some contents on to my JApplet, it will follow border layout. So I have to specify exactly where my component need to be placed. Adding the component will have the parameter which particular border, whether it should be added in north, south, east or west, I have to specify that. So you should not put painting code directly on JApplet code. So on applet you can have your painting being done, whereas in case of JApplet you cannot place the painted contents directly on your JApplet. Next is about your applet servlet communication. So before we move into discussing about applet servlet communication, you should know something about your servlet. So applet is a code which is run on a browser. So it means that your Java code is written and then this Java code is embedded inside the body part of your HTML. So that we have seen when we have seen in the first session that HTML will have header and body part. So inside your body part we normally include the applet code or applet tag that is specified in your HTML file. So now whereas this could only do or access the information that is available in your client. So that is your browser system. Whereas your server system, so this is meant for web application, I have told you. So the applet is meant for being used in your web application. So in that case what I need to do is I have to have a client page, as well as there should be some server side code which is executed on your server. So your server side code here could only be servlet, or it could be a JSP, because in Java your applet is Java, that is your Java code embedded inside HTML, and hence it could only communicate with the Java server side code. So other server side code includes, in case in .NET if you are using, you will be using ASP, and you can also have your PHP pages, whereas here at the other end I will have a servlet code. So servlet is nothing but a server side code written in Java, which could be invoked by the container. That is, container is an application which is available on your web server. So now applet is purely created and displayed on a browser. On submitting this particular applet, this will be communicated to the server side code that is available on the server. So applet has input stream as well as output stream, similar to that of your sockets. So this applet's input stream and output stream is used in order to make communication between your applet as well as your servlet. Servlet's streams will normally not be directly connected by your HTML page, whereas from applet I can make the communication possible through my streams. So you can see here, from servlet to applet, in your applet class we have to create a URL object by giving the servlet address. So that is nothing but your server side code's address. On URL object we are calling open connection method and creating an URL connection. So in network package, in net package, we have seen what is URL and what is URL connection. So on the URL connection object, call the get input stream method in order to receive some input from that of your servlet. So from here you can read the data very easily. The other end, what you have to do is you have to repeat two steps, that is, you are going to create a URL connection and the URL, and then you are going to have a URL connection. Then we have to call the output stream in order to get the output stream object. So this is used in order to write data on the output. So from applet I am going to write, and from the servlet end I am going to read the contents. So this is how an applet and servlet communication takes place in a web application which is purely developed using your Java. So from this session we have learnt about how to make event listeners implemented in applet, how to load all your GUI components, how you can create layouts, and we have seen what is the difference between JApplet and applet, and also we have seen how applet servlet communication takes place. And from this session we could be able to answer questions such as how are GUI components added in the applet, what is the default layout for an applet, how applet is different from that of the JApplet, how are event listeners included in the applets, and so on. So in your forthcoming sessions we are going to see about your threads and how threads are created, and then we are going to discuss about how a Java application that could be created with GUI, without GUI, and how to develop a pure object oriented application. Thank you.